World War II wasn't just won with production line machines. Behind the scenes, engineers on every side were pushing the boundaries of armored warfare with radical prototypes and experimental designs. Some of these tanks were brilliant, others were absolutely bizarre. Many never made it past the testing phase, but their innovations shaped the future of tank warfare. This video covers the most important experimental tanks that tried to change the game during World War II. Germany's super heavy dreams. Let's start with Germany's obsession with massive tanks. Panzer VII Lohe Lion. Before the Tiger ever rolled off the assembly line, German engineers drafted plans for an even heavier beast. The Lohe would have weighed up to 90 tons and mounted either a long 80mm or 105mm gun. However, Hitler himself canceled the project in 1942, redirecting resources toward the Tiger program instead. VK 4501 P. Porsche Tiger. Ferdinand Porsche's unique design for what became the Tiger tank. Competition. Instead of a traditional transmission, it used a gasoline-electric hybrid system with two air-cooled engines. While innovative, it proved unreliable and lost to Henschel's simpler design. The 90 hulls already built were converted into the Ferdinand tank destroyer rather than scrapped. Maus. The heaviest tank ever built, and the name was pure German irony. This 188-ton monster carried a 128mm main gun and a coaxial 75mm gun in the same turret. Only 2 prototypes were completed before war's end. Its weight made it too slow and too heavy for bridges, requiring it to drive across river bottoms using a snorkel system. The Maus could barely reach 8 miles per hour. E-Series tanks. In 1943, Germany attempted to rationalize tank production with the E-Series, or Development Series. These standardized designs, ranging from the E-10 light tank to the E-100 Super Heavy, were meant to simplify manufacturing. Only the E-100 progressed beyond blueprints, with one incomplete hull, captured by the Allies in 1945. Soviet experimental giants. The Soviets were equally ambitious with experimental armor. SMK, Sergei Mironovich Kirov, a multi-turret heavy tank prototype built in 1939. It featured 2 turrets stacked front to back, mounting a 76mm gun in the main turret and a 45mm gun in the smaller one. Combat trials during the Winter War against Finland revealed it was too heavy and mechanically unreliable, leading to its cancellation. T-100, the SMK's competitor, also featuring multiple turrets. This 58-ton beast carried a similar 2-turret layout but with a longer hull. Like the SMK, it proved too cumbersome in Finnish combat conditions. Both tanks were abandoned in favor of the simpler, single-turret KV-1 heavy tank. KV-2 with ZIS-6 gun. Not content with the standard KV-2's massive turret, Soviet engineers experimented with mounting an even larger 107mm ZIS-6 gun. The resulting prototype was dangerously top-heavy and prone to mechanical failure. Only a handful were built before the project was scrapped in favor of more practical designs. Object 212, a 1947 design that actually originated during late war planning. This experimental assault gun featured a rear-mounted casemate and exceptionally thick frontal armor. Though technically post-war, its development reflected wartime thinking about breakthrough vehicles. KV-7. In an attempt to create a heavily armored self-propelled gun, the KV-7 mounted multiple weapon configurations during trials. One version featured twin 76mm guns, while another carried a single 107mm gun. None proved superior to existing designs, and the project died in 1942. American experimentals. American engineers took a more practical approach to experimental tanks. T-1 Heavy Tank. America's first attempt at a heavy tank in 1940. It featured a multi-turret design reminiscent of British tanks, with a main turret and 2 machine gun turrets. Weighing 43 tons and sporting a 76mm gun, it was deemed too slow and mechanically complex for American doctrine, which favored speed and reliability. T-14 Assault Tank. Designed specifically for British Lend-Lease requirements, the T-14 featured extremely thick armor and a low profile. Only 2 prototypes were built before the British decided they preferred the Churchill tank. The T-14's innovative features influenced later American heavy tank development. T-28 T95 Super Heavy tank. Technically a self-propelled gun rather than a tank, this 95-ton monster was designed to break through German fortifications like the Siegfried Line. It featured removable outer tracks to reduce its width for transport. Only 2 were built, and they arrived too late to see combat. Its 105mm gun and 12-inch frontal armor made it nearly impenetrable. T-29, T-30, and T-34 heavy tanks, a family of experimental heavy tanks developed in response to German Tigers and Panthers. The T-29 carried a massive 105mm gun, the T-30 mounted a 155mm gun, and the T-34 featured a 120mm gun. These prototypes were completed just as the war ended, too late for combat but influential on post-war American tank design. Christie M1928. Though developed before the war, J. Walter Christie's revolutionary suspension system was experimental enough to deserve mention. The Soviets purchased the design, which became the foundation for the BT series and eventually the T-34. American military officials initially rejected it as too unconventional. British innovations and oddities. The British developed some of the war's strangest experimental tanks, TOG I and TOG II. The Old Gang, a committee of elderly World War I tank designers, created these throwback machines. The TOG II stretched over 33 feet long and resembled a World War I tank with better armor. It mounted a 17-pounder gun, but moved at just 8.5 miles per hour. Only 1 prototype of each was built, serving primarily as training aids. A-38 Valiant. An attempt to create a heavily armored infantry tank, the Valiant featured a cast hull and the Churchill's suspension. However, it was chronically underpowered and suffered from overheating. After trials revealed it was slower and less reliable than existing tanks, the entire project was cancelled. Black Prince. Essentially, a Churchill tank stretched to accommodate a larger turret and the powerful 17-pounder gun. 6 prototypes were built in 1945, but the war ended before production could begin. Its heavy armor made it agonizingly slow, even by Churchill standards. Tortoise. Not technically a tank, but a heavy assault gun. The Tortoise featured absolutely massive armor up to 9 inches thick. Weighing 78 tons and armed with a 32-pounder gun, it could barely reach 12 miles per hour. 6 were built, with trials continuing into 1947, but it represented outdated thinking in an age of increasingly mobile warfare. OI Super Heavy tank. Japan's own super heavy design, weighing between 100 and 150 tons depending on the configuration. Only 1 prototype may have been built in 1943, featuring multiple turrets and extremely thick armor. Records are fragmentary, and its very existence remains debated by historians. Type 5 Chi-Ri. Japan's attempt to match Allied medium tanks, mounting a 75mm gun with an unusual semi-automatic loading system. Only a few were completed before war's end, and none saw combat. It represented Japan's recognition that their existing tanks were hopelessly outclassed. Type 4 Chi-To. A predecessor to the Chi-Ri, attempting to upgrade Japanese tank firepower. Its long 75mm gun gave it respectable armor-piercing capability, but production delays meant only a handful were finished before Japan's surrender. Experimental tanks taught engineers valuable lessons about what worked and what didn't. The super heavy tanks proved that bigger wasn't always better. Multi-turret designs were abandoned in favor of single, powerful main guns. Hybrid drive systems couldn't match traditional transmissions for reliability. Yet, innovations from these experiments shaped the future. Christie's suspension, Porsche's electric drive concepts, and lessons about armor slope all influenced post-war tank development. Most of these machines never fired a shot in anger, but they represent the desperate creativity of nations fighting for survival.